Our next one is New Advisor Network, starting strong as new advisors by new advisors. And our presenters are Sarah Deem and Stephanie Dykas, both from West Virginia University.
Okay, awesome. So hello, my name is Sarah. We'll go into more formal introductions later. But this presentation is brought to you by the New Advisor Network, and it's tips for new advisors by new advisors. So for those that most of us know, a new advisor is defined by NACADA as anybody with 3 or less years of advising experience. And that's Steph and I. So that's why we're bringing you tips, something that maybe if you've been in the job for a while, you haven't really thought of, since you were a newbie, or maybe it's all going to be brand new. We'll see. But to start out, hi, my name is Sarah Deem. I am an advisor in the School of Medicine at WVU. I have my bachelor's and master's in exercise physiology, and I'm a year and 1 month, almost 2 months in the job, and I work with 6 different programs across the School of Medicine, and all of those students are at a variety of places in their academic career.
And hi, my name is Stephanie Dykas. I'm a senior academic advisor at WVU in the Forensic and Investigative Science program. So I get to work with our forensic biology, forensic chemistry, and forensic examiner majors from the first to the third year. I've been doing this for almost 3 years, coming up in November. So yeah, it's been really great so far, and we're excited to present to you guys. All right, so just to go through a little outline before we get into the meat of things is we were going to be covering things like adjusting to the position and engaging in the advising community and ultimately supporting students. As we are going to be new advisors, we're figuring out a lot of things. And so this is just a potential way to help you in that adjustment. Just this week, I had found that 40% of the advisors at WVU are new advisors. So having 3 or less years of experience, and then also that 15% have been in the job here for 6 months or less. So hopefully this can really help you guys out today. And then as we jump in and start talking about adjusting to the position, one of the things is going to be the onboarding strategies. So depending on your institution, these are going to differ. You might be having something like an advising website. That's something that we have had before. Some people that started may have used the advising shell. Now it's a website. But then we're also going to have things like walkthroughs. So those might be videos on showing you how these different programs work. That can also be mentorship, which we've heard a little bit about each of these today. Having that mentor, so somebody that you can learn from and somebody that even can learn from you, even as a newbie, kind of help reignite that flame sometimes. And then our other thing is going to be looking at our policies. So this can be very overwhelming between institutional, college, and departmental policies. So getting into that information and starting to learn it, you'll find that a lot of your job is going to be learned by doing this. So as you go in, you start learning things maybe like those financial aid policies, but then you're also directing students to financial aid, or how does your specific department or this specific major run? So those are things that are going to come in time through practice. The last main part of this adjusting to the position is going to be learning all the resources and tools, which, as we know, there are also plenty of these at many institutions. So that could be through student support services like tutoring or mental health services or student organizations. And how are we going to be in the know so that we can let students know? And these are going to be found out through partnerships or through some professional development, and then also being able to incorporate things like guides for our students when certain times come around. So that might be when registration rolls around and they run into issues, how can we help them overcome them? Or that can also be things like forms for whenever they're trying to do classes at another school, for example.
And I know that can be a lot, especially if you're a new advisor. We're like 4 weeks in, you're probably slammed, lots of things, also lots of presentations, lots of new information coming at you. So it's okay to feel overwhelmed at the time. It's good to get acclimated to your position, but also just take a break. These can be work-related tasks, tasks, if you feel like you're so overwhelmed that you don't have time for anything not work related, you can do other things, small tasks, especially if your advising plans start to bleed together and you're like, oh my gosh, I met with 10 students today. How do I manage that? So sometimes we can just then incorporate work tasks, such as adding things to your calendar, adding university holidays, see the days you get to take off, add drop deadlines, reminding yourself of those policies, just so you have it on hand when you talk to students. Looking at advising deadlines, whether that is for your specific program or across the university. Me personally, I like to organize a task. So if I start to feel overwhelmed, I'm like, okay, I have to meet with so many students this week. Sometimes I just make a game plan. I outline what I need to do, kind of separate my time, and then that way I can organize how I'm going to approach it rather than actually focusing on the task itself. That way it gives me a break, but also then I'm still doing something productive. I'm still doing something related to work. But then you can also do some non-work related tasks, like taking a walk. If you guys know Finding Nemo, do you have your exit buddy? Find a walking buddy. Usually others in the office are probably just as overwhelmed. So finding somebody that you can say, hey, I need a 10-minute walk. You guys get up, get some vitamin D, go out into the sun, get some fresh air. We don't have windows in our office, so I love that. Maybe it's meditating. I can also just sit, shut my door, stare at the wall for 10 minutes, and sometimes that's what I need in the moment if I'm feeling super overwhelmed. Or you could just chat with coworkers about non-work related issues. Make sure they're not busy first, but then that way you guys can talk, get a good conversation going. I've had a really good time with fantasy football this year, so that's been my topic of conversation. So just adding that to your regular work piece to then help you kind of like take a break, because burnout is real. And that's what we ultimately want to do, is we want to minimize our burnout. And to do that, we want to prioritize our mental, physical, and emotional well-being, because the more balanced you are at balancing your professional and your personal life, the more effective you can be at work and therefore be effective for your students. And so some ways to incorporate this, like what I mentioned before, taking breaks during the workday, chatting with your colleagues, prioritizing your sleep. If anybody watches Dancing with the Stars, I didn't watch it last night because I knew that I had this presentation this morning. And so an 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. viewing was not in the books for me, but I will be watching it this week. So prioritizing that, checking your email. Once you go home for the day, turn your email off. Stop looking at it. Give yourself time to focus on you. And then what are some other things that you can do for you? Like, can you send out mass emails at the beginning of the semester? I have a couple freshmen who have been very anxiously awaiting an advising meeting with me. And so I've sent out an email saying, hey, I promise I did not forget about you. We will have a meeting. You don't register until the end of October. Please give me time. And then maybe just kind of like outlining what you're doing each week. If you notice the QR code on the screen, this is actually a resource for you all that Steph and I created as a way just to kind of let you kind of take a step back, prioritize mental health, physical health, and things like that. So we added little notes to each block. And then if you wanted to print this off, you can. You don't have to, but this QR code will also take you to it. And that way you guys, if you don't want to think of, oh, how can I take a break? Get the bingo board, put it on your wall, and then that way you can on your own do your own mental health tasks. And if you want to make some changes, maybe you don't listen to TED Talks or podcasts, maybe you just listen to a Taylor Swift album from start to finish. I think that's a good mental break, but just making it your own, so then that way you can be the most effective for your students.
All right. And then as we continue moving in to this new job in this position, another thing that we can do is start engaging in our advising community. So one of the first things is going to be getting involved. We have a lot of events throughout all of these institutions that are presented to advisors that they can attend. And sometimes we just don't open up that email, or just it makes it into our calendar, but we just decide not to go. And we might have fear of, oh, these people don't know me. But by attending these events, you are able to become a familiar face to others. It also is a bit of us evaluating our email habits, as we know that students don't always open theirs, and we wish that they would. We can also do that as advisors and lead by example by even opening up those emails, seeing some of those, throwing them in our calendar, and then going, because going is going to allow you to build those relationships with other advisors. You can look for somebody who might be able to mentor you that isn't necessarily in your department. Whenever I started, Nick Haas Brown, that man let me ask him so many questions whenever I started. And he was able to kind of be a mentor for me, but there's other people throughout the university that I also see as mentors. And then if you have been in the role for a while, you can mentor others. So as you see somebody new, be that person that goes up to them and says hello and then starts a conversation, and is able to build those relationships. We're also going to have things like our advising committees where they need individuals that can help look at statistics or plan workshops and events. So by getting involved in your advising community, that can help those around you so you can serve that community in those ways. And if you also know, then it's something you can even throw on your resume, but is something that you can, help that work continue. We're also going to have our affinity groups. So these might be things that aren't necessarily at your institution. These could be our regional or national conferences. One of those, so we know we're in Region 3. We mentioned that earlier. And then NACADA is going to be that overall advising group. And this allows you to not only meet people in your region, but throughout the United States, seeing what people are doing out west, or see what people are doing down south. And what are new strategies that you could potentially include in your advising? Then we're also going to have our developing of networks. So that's going to include things like professional development workshops that our academic advising council and other groups are very commonly putting on. That'll include the new advisor network. So you can be on the lookout for us if you're at WVU's Morgantown campus, and we'll send you more information. At the end is our email. So you can say, hey, sign me up for this thing, and then we'll let you know what's going on. But then there's a lot of ways to get involved. There's going to be those trainings. We do social events and we do celebrations. So things that we can encourage one another in these positions. And with that, I just want to highlight NACADA real quick, which is going to be that National Academic Advising Association. They actually have their national conference coming up October 26th to 29th. That's going to be in Las Vegas. You could talk to the people in charge of your department and see if there's potential funding so that you can go. You can always ask those in your department that you work alongside, those head advisors, if they can help you through that process and figuring things out. But this does allow you to connect with advisors at other institutions, learn those best practices, and bring some new ideas back that you can incorporate in your advising.
And so far, we've talked a lot about how support for you is support for your students. And in doing so, another way you can do that is to create a welcoming environment. These are actually pictures of our offices. So mine is on the left. I'm a big Halloween girl, so I already have my Halloween decorations up. But in doing that, it adds more personality to a space and also as a conversation piece. It could also be an identifying factor because there are multiple advisors in my unit. So if I have a student who comes up to me and says, you're the girl that likes Halloween, I'll say, yes, I am the girl that likes Halloween. And if that's the only way they can identify me, that is a-okay with me because they at least know I'm their advisor. And also other things that you can do as well that Steph has incorporated, putting a comfy chair in your office. She has a really nice one. It just like you sink into it. So comforting. And then also putting out some takeaways, snacks, drinks. Steph has a coffee bar. I have a candy jar. And they also have in her office, they have space for a waiting room. So they have a puzzle out. So then that way as students are waiting, they can go work on a puzzle. And ultimately, if it's a comfy space for you, it's a comfy space for them because, energies travel. So if I'm comfortable and open in my space, hopefully that'll lead my students to also be open and comfortable in my space.
And then with that, by having that initial comforting or intentional, set up room for them so that they feel welcome, you can have intentional and active communication with your students. So we do want that meat of those conversations. So sometimes having that welcoming environment makes them bring down those walls a little bit. So then when they come in, you start saying like, where are you from? Like, what are some things that you like to do outside of classes? I just learned that one of my students really enjoys MMA and is like really like has like some cool like karate belts and stuff too. So we got to have conversations about that, or learning that of my students helped design like a pin for the state and like went all the way to nationals for this. So like finding out new ideas and asking them about themselves and like jotting that down so you can follow up with them later on. And also being willing to tell them about you so that they know who they are working with. And building those relationships are great because as you work with them, those are things that can continue. Yesterday, I had 3 of my students that are now in their 3rd year pop into my office and just sit and talk for a little bit just to catch up. And we ended up doing the Wordle and the Global. So just cool ways that you can interact with your students where they don't just want to stop in for getting their classes, but they want to stop in and interact because they know that you got their back. So that's going to give a really good relationship between you and them, but then also bringing in some active communication. So knowing that you guys are both staying on top of what you need. So giving them direction, kind of having those responsibilities laid out so that you guys can also have a productive conversation of how can we get you to where you are looking to go. So when we are able to combine these two, we get professional yet individualized advising experiences for our students. So with this, you get a ton of information, right? You're like, oh, I'm figuring out the policies. I'm being told to get involved and trying to support my students. How do we practically do this when we might be in the job for less than 6 months and you're like, actually, I don't know how to start. So I always say, lay the groundwork with a welcome email. Send out to them like, hi, I'm going to be your advisor. This is a little bit about me. And it's not just, oh, I got my degree in biochem and forensic biology, but like, oh, outside of work, I like to bake and play pickleball, like telling them new things about you that can make them feel more comfortable and being friendly in those ways. Then you can also start working on your campaigns after, because if you are working with a lot of students, you might need to start sooner than you expect. I realize this every semester. So this year I started mine this past Monday and have been working through those, but sitting down and figuring out if I have X amount of students, how much time do I have to meet with each of them? Is it 10 minutes or can I designate an hour? Seeing what that looks like, how many days or how many appointments you want per day, and then setting out those times so you can backtrack when you need to begin those appointments. With that, you start meeting with your students. You can get all of your registration information ready and send out those registration errors. So that might be a good time to review those policies since it'll have been a while going through the semester. And then also what happens after our registration. Of course, we're going to have that add drop season. So being able to review your university's policies, knowing your financial aid information, and we often don't necessarily say we are the end all. We say go to financial aid. So memorizing that phone number is going to be helpful. So being able to direct students in those cases on what is going to be best practice or best for them. And then the last part in that is going to be, okay, we've reached the end of the semester. If you didn't pass a course, what do we do? So looking at those policies as well and trying to find best practices, best next steps for those students. So this is a way that you can kind of see these are the best times to refresh on certain pieces of information, but a good flow as you start working with those students. Okay. And then a few little extras. What can we do to continue to be intentional and have that clear communication? Something that I do with my students is I'll send out little check-in forms. I call them vibe checks, matching with that young generation. So seeing like, how are you? How are classes going? Is there anything that you're worried about or that I should know about? Is there anything that you need to talk to me about or that I can do to support you? So being able to just see where they're at, it means a lot to them because it can take 2 minutes to fill that out, and then you're not like making them come to your office and just saying, "Oh, I wanted to check in on you." And some students are gonna, fill it out, and others aren't, but they at least know that that invitation is there. So doing that is a way to kind of hands off, see how they're doing, and also put potential issues on your radar. So if a student's worried about a class, you could say, okay, I might need to prep. What can we do if this happens? One other thing is you could potentially send out an email, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be weekly. I'll do that for some students or for students as we go through. So it's saying, hey, like, I know you get a lot of emails from your advisor are important. These are your upcoming dates. These are things that you need to do. We need to meet. You should come with a prepared schedule. This is what you can know that you'll need next. And sometimes that depends on the major. Mine is very structured, so they can come in knowing a pretty good overall thing, which allows them to be in the driver's seat and you to be teaching them how to steer. So that's a good practice so that you're also not overwhelming yourself and saying, I'm the one who messed up, when no, it's actually a shared partnership between you and your students.
Yeah, and going along with that, having clear communication on like what each person's responsibility is. So this is part of a graphic that was created by W.U. Statler College of Engineering and was then kind of given to the new advisor network as a resource. So then other advisors across campus could kind of adapt it, make it their own as needed. We actually just presented this in our first year seminar for a couple of our programs. But again, it just lays out that the students have a responsibility with their schedule, to keep their schedule, to make their schedule. Your job as the advisor is to help guide them as they're making these decisions and to keep up to date on policies and other things that are happening around the university. And so I included these specifically in the presentation so that way if anybody else wanted to use them, you can. And then it should be also included in the resources at the end, like on the website. But so this is what we presented to our students, again, outlining student responsibilities versus their advisor responsibility. Another thing is to be intentional and clear with your conversation to your students. Yes, you can still add more conversation pieces to your emails, of course. Validate them. Yes, thank you for reaching out. Hey, how are you? But also include, specific things that they might need. So deadlines, university announcements, advising campaigns. I kind of gave mine a heads up. Like I said, I have that freshman who's very excited to meet with me. So I gave him my outline of, hey, listen, I know you're excited. Give me 2 weeks. I'm meeting with these students, and then you'll be able to register a time to meet with me. Maybe specific registration information, tutoring options, whether it's in your program or across the campus, and other resources that they might need. So for example, this is specific to me, and it's just an idea if a new advisor wants to take it on or somebody else experienced also likes it. All of my emails to my students post our meeting are very similar in how they're structured, just because that way I can copy and paste. My links are already included, and I can just take out the information I don't need. So I include a link to their plan of study. I use a Google Sheet, so then that way the student can make edits. I'm only there as a viewer. But I can also make edits if needed. A link to the course registration guide, which we had at WVU, and it kind of outlines issues that they might see when trying to register or how to register. It's changed a little bit recently, but that's okay. For the bulk of it, it's the same. Important dates, so course offerings, when are they releasing? When can they go into Schedule Builder and start looking at schedules? When do they register? When's registration week? When do their grad applications open? When can they apply? And then other resources across campus, clubs, other offices, where they can shadow, research, lots of things I get lots of questions about. And then this is kind of like how it's structured. So then that way I have the resource ready. And again, this is just kind of my template. I will include a link to their plan of study. I have the important dates listed out. If they need help registering, before I attach the course registration guide, now I have a link with problem solving tips for them just in case they need it. And then this one's specific to communication sciences and disorders, which is why I have the CIDCAS application on there, and then their goal date to turn it in versus their actual date, because it needs to be verified and things that they might not think of, things like that. And then also get to the point. We all get a lot of emails. Students do, we do. So making sure that whenever we do send emails that we can include conversational pieces, but we want to make sure that we are very direct in what we're saying. So then that way, students, if they see 3 paragraphs, they'll skim it and not read a thing. If they see a bulleted list, it's probably more approachable for them to say, okay, here's what I can do. Here are my steps. So be direct, be intentional with what you're saying and how to say it. Be clear and concise with the verbiage that you use with these incoming freshmen. They might not know what I'm talking about when I say, oh, go to Schedule Builder. They've been here for 4 weeks, they've probably seen it, but they might not be as familiar with it yet. And then also be kind, knowing that these students, we might answer the same question 20 times in a day. but the 20th time we get it might be from a student that has not interacted with us much before. And so basically taking each time a student comes to us as like the first time. For them, it's new, it's scary. So being kind in our response, even if we've already seen it 30 times that day. And ultimately, students will
We have
determine
about 3 minutes left, Sarah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. This is the last one. So ultimately, students will determine the advising relationship. So some will visit your office often. I've had one freshman who stopped by at least 3 times already this semester, and that's okay. And then others might only stop by once, and that's also okay. They're going to decide how they want to interact with you and what kind of relationship they want to have with you. But no matter the way it is, support should be consistent. Again, even if you've solved the same problem 30 times that day, the student who sent you the question that you've answered already, it might be their first time. They might be a little scared, a little nervous. They're not sure what's happening. It's a stressful time for them. And so we are here to help guide them, advise them, and we make sure that we are consistently supporting our students in the same way. And also, you will make mistakes in your advising role. I for sure have, Steph probably has, we all probably have, but you will learn by doing. So students that you've built strong relationships with are often the most understanding when a mistake is made. So making sure that we do build those strong connections. So Steph, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you summed that up perfectly. So we'll take any questions if you guys have them. Just so you know, we are going to have a bunch of resources that are going to come with this. So we have the advisor bingo also as a PDF and not just the QR code. We have things like the transient, we have a transient guidebook that Lisa Licata in my department made. So shout out to her. Thank you very much. And we have a bunch of other resources for things like registration errors or navigating registration. So we're happy to take any questions if you have them.